Living Sacrifice, probably one of the most legendary bands we've ever interviewed on this podcast. I mean, we've certainly interviewed some big bands, but in terms of a band where everybody knows and is so influenced by Living Sacrifice, it really is a special honor. So thanks so much, Bruce, for joining us and chatting about Living Sacrifice and chatting about your upcoming Furnace Fest show.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice words. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it.
For sure.
So I don't even know where to be. Where do you begin with the band like Living Sacrifice? Obviously, we want to talk about the upcoming show, but as much as we can, it would be really cool to hear a little bit about like the history of Living Sacrifice, how you guys started, kind of where you're at in your careers now, and just everything in between. But talk a little bit about kind of those early days, like what got you guys all started wanting to play in a band and play metal music.
Yeah, for sure. Have you guys interviewed any band that started in the 80s?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah,
in fact, we've interviewed bands from the 70s even.
Nice. Okay.
So you're not even close to the oldest.
Not even close. I'm 10 years. Yeah. We're 10 years too young. There you go. Well, we barely formed in the 80s. I have to say, probably our official lineup solidified, towards the tail end of 1989. And
great year. Taylor Swift was born. Living Sacrifice started. What a year!
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm sure she named her album in honor of us, not
That's
her
right.
age.
That's what I heard.
Date, so. So yeah. So Lance and myself and Darren Johnson all met. I met them in like 7th grade, junior high school.
Wow.
And I wanted to hang out with them because they had like Black Sabbath and Ozzy shirts on and Judas Priest shirts on and stuff like that. And I was like, well, those are my people over there. And then we had mutual friends. It was a small school that a few neighborhoods fed into. So it wasn't hard to kind of befriend them and get to know them and everything. Well, Lance was a little hard because he was so quiet. He and I had English class together, I believe, in 7th grade. And these guys were cool because they already had kind of longish hair, and like Lance had this little rat tail that he would bleach blonde and everything. And awesome. And I was still kind of just in a mullet phase, we just bonded over music kind of right away, and just hanging out and doing dumb stuff. But I mean, our friendship formed over years. Now Lance and DJ, they grew up like just a few houses apart. Lance and DJ grew up just a few houses apart, so they were like little kids growing up together and stuff like that. So, and there's some pretty cool pictures of them with Kiss t-shirts on and stuff like that. But
speaking of which, something I'm always curious about, especially for bands that got their start in the 80s, there was kind of this separation between the kids that listen to metal music and the kids that listen to like punk music and things of that sort. So each of the musical categories, I guess, kind of had their own little silos, and they didn't really crossbreed at all. Like today they do, for sure, right? I mean,
yeah.
Furnace Fest, for instance, you have emo music,
sure.
You have punk music, you have metal music. Was that kind of how it was when you were growing up as well? It was just like the metal kids hang out with the metal kids, the punk kids hang out with the punk kids, the preps hang out with the preps, so on and so forth.
Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, and I wasn't privy to the punk scene until I got into high school. And we all went to high school together too. And then I met some dudes, and I mean, we became friends just because we were kind of all like misfits, anyways. But
sure.
But And then every now and then we ended up at the same shows, but like we didn't run around in the same circles. I mean, the punk kids were absolutely, you know, kind of rebelling against like all of us long haired metal dudes, and you know they're like because we, you know, we weren't that extreme at that point. You know, we were just like some, you know, some long haired hippies who liked metal or whatever, you know. But you know, these guys were like, you know, wearing patches on their jackets, and you know, I mean, like your typical like, you know, gutter punk looking, you know, just
For sure.
you know, look as completely against society as you possibly can. And
Yeah.
and I think you know, long hair and metal and classic rock represented almost like their dad's music, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, the
You know,
establishment, the man.
yeah. So like, you know, the rock bands of the world, and it's super funny, you know, like listening to like people like Henry Rollins and talk about going to shows with going to see Ted Nugent with Ian MacKaye and stuff like that on various podcasts and stuff like that. I mean, those guys are slightly older than me, obviously, so or
Yeah.
a bit older than me. So like that is the world they grew up in. But then they also created like or also helped found this world of punk. But yeah, I wasn't too privy to any of that scene until high school, and then really, I mean, truly, like some of the first you know, punk stuff that I got into was more post punk, like Fugazi
Yeah.
and Jawbox and stuff like that. I love Jawbox. They're one of my favorite bands of, you know, that kind of that time period of like being young and discovering music and stuff like that, and hearing something that was completely different than what I was into, which was like, you know, I mean, you know, essentially, you know, I came up within the whole '80s metal scene, you know, new wave of British heavy metal, and even into kind of the hair metal stuff with like Rat, Motley Crue to a certain point. And then there was a point where I was like, yeah, I'm done with this because it was just too, you know, too much makeup for me.
Yeah.
You know, not that that's a bad thing. I mean, that's a look, it's a thing, it's whatever. But I was definitely moving more towards you know, your Slayers and Megadeth, Metallica, and stuff like that.
The real masculine stuff, right?
Well, you know, it wasn't that for me, honestly. It was more like it was more like I was getting into like more complex music
Yeah, for sure.
and musical composition, and the hair metal stuff was just getting dumbed down, you know.
Right.
I mean, if you want to blame hair metal, you blame you know, on any one particular band. It's basically Van Halen, and that's the band that got me into music or whatever, and the musicianship there is just kind of off the
Outrageous.
charts.
Yeah, for sure.
So you know, everything after that is just like a, you know, not quite there. But yeah, it just got a little too much pomp and circumstance, and not enough shredding solos.
What was the scene like in those the early 90s? You know, there was so much change that happened in music, you know,
Insane
especially
change,
once Nirvana came onto the scene. You know, music like that hadn't been really popular before, that really alternative kind of heavier stuff where there's even some screaming, like legitimate screaming, like, you know, you'd get from Nirvana and, you know, obviously a lot of other bands that were coming up at that time. There was a lot changing in that alternative music scene where it used to be, you know, very underground. It was very, you know, a lot of the, you know, outside, the outcast type of kids listening to that music. And then all of a sudden now a lot of people were starting to listen to that type of music. And obviously the kind of metal you guys were making in Living Sacrifice was always probably going to be a little too much for the, you know, MTVs of the world. But did you feel like a sense that like, oh, there could be something here, like this could be a legitimate thing that we do, because the music industry at the time was changing and like embracing a little bit more of this like kind of alternative type of music?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely changed really fast, you know, and you know, I think in a lot of ways for the better. I mean, all the reasons I was not into the popular metal at the time was the antithesis of these newer bands or whatever. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, I just liked it right away. I liked Nirvana as soon as I heard it, but what I liked more was Soundgarden
Yeah,
and
that's my jam right there.
and Alice in Chains, and but really Soundgarden. I mean, but you can't deny the catchiness of the early Nirvana stuff. I mean, it definitely, there was a reason it exploded and stuff. So like so context for us is we grew up in a small southern city. And so we didn't get a lot of shows, except for in 1990 there was this one particular all ages club that opened up. It was a pizza place club, and it's still open today, and people still play. There's still shows there.
Sweet.
Called Vino's, and we played our third show there ever in 1990. So the club opened as Vino's. It was actually it was a punk club before that, but they bought the building and they turned it into a legitimate like pizza place, restaurant, and venue. And so we played there the same year that it opened, and we actually went in there and said, because at the time, the bands that were playing, heavy metal in Little Rock, Arkansas, were mainly cover bands. Sure. And there was a few bands playing, writing originals and stuff like that, but they're mainly playing bars and stuff like that. And we were still underage for the most part. I mean, when we started the band, I was 17, and I think the DJ was the oldest member of the band, at 19 when we first started, and like even before Jason, because Lance and DJ and I, probably jammed for like a year and a half or so before we met Jason, who became our fourth member, and actually solidified the lineup, Jason Truby. Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, so back then it was we went in to play Vino's, or we were handing off demo tapes and trying to get a show there and stuff like that. We just wanted to open for somebody because we were a brand new band or whatever, and we were like, yeah, we're a thrash band, but we don't really we want to play with a touring band, like, and that particular club was bringing in the touring bands they were bringing in were more on the punk and hardcore side. And so I said, it'd be cool if you didn't just put us with another metal band, especially like on the local side, because it just, we probably wouldn't have fit, and we weren't really trying to go after that particular crowd. And so our first show that we opened up for Shelter, which was Ray Capo, Youth of Today, mm-hmm. Previously Youth of Today, and that was his new band. It was called Shelter, and they were, and the club owner, the booker, just thought it was funny because he was like, "Oh, got this Hare Krishna band coming in to play on this date. You guys want to play with them?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, totally." And at that point, we actually knew who Shelter was, so we're like, "Oh, this will be rad," It's like, we just, we get to play with like, these guys that are, veterans of their scene, not ours, obviously. And so yeah, it was cool. It was, show went killer, and we had a good time. But like, yeah, Little Rock was weird, man. I mean, it actually had like a cool, like very underground, punk indie scene, and a lame metal scene. There was one particular metal band where or a couple out there that had some pretty good influence, and they were writing originals and stuff as well. And only one other thrash band that we were aware of, this band called Scream. And we got to hang out and watch those guys, when we were even younger, because Darren's cousin was the drummer for the band. But yeah, it was like they were playing, new wave British heavy metal stuff, and just like, lots of satanic imagery and all the fun stuff. But being in Little Rock, Arkansas, or just Arkansas in general, just kind of had us limited as to the exposure of what we were, you know, even exposed to on a live stage, you know.
At what point did you get the sense that, oh, this could be really a thing? Like we're going to be able to make it out of just being like a little rock band, you know, that you guys now are like nationally known. Was there a point where maybe it was in that first album, maybe it was a couple albums later, maybe it was when you guys signed to Solid State, but at what point did you feel like, oh, this is bigger than what little rock is? Like we're not just a little rock band anymore.
Yeah, I mean, probably like when we started talking to our first label, which was through the guys in Believer, and REX Music, and they wanted to sign us. That was like kind of the first, you know, when we were talking about signing a record deal, and we were barely 1 year into being a band or a full band. That was just kind of crazy. I mean, I was just a year out of high school, and I was still 18. Jason was 17, and he had to have his mom sign the contract. So, yeah. So
Awesome.
I mean, as soon
as his mom bring him to the venues too to play shows.
No, but they all came. I mean, the family, you know, the parents supported us. You know, they were really, you know, they were cool with it and supportive and everything like that. But yeah, so we were all just super young, and we had no clue what we were doing. You know, Darren, our original singer who started the band, and he actually named the band Living Sacrifice. He would get demo tapes from like Guys in the Crucified and Believer and all of these bands, Vengeance Rising, and there were phone numbers on the demo, and he would just call them up, be like, "Hey man, my name's DJ, and you know, we got a band, you know." These guys on the other line were like, "Okay, cool." You know, why are you calling me? That type of thing.
So, something to go along with that. I don't mean to cut off the question, but something kind of going along with that. Were you guys, the rest of the band, were you guys kind of on board with that same, you know, like Christian forward message as Darren was?
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing was like as we were all of us were, you know, we were all super into music and going to shows and stuff like that, and really metal. I mean, none of us were raised in super religious. Me, not at all. I actually never went to church until I, you know, became interested in those things, which I was like, I was 16, 17. My parents were more on the, you know, that just wasn't a thing for them. You
was
know?
it a big thing in their lives? Sure. Yeah.
Nope. And so, I mean, I was, you know, none of us were ever told, "Oh, you can't listen to that," or "You're not supposed to listen to that." That was not a thing for any of us. So we were into it, into music. And then all of us sort of independently, but together, you know, around the same time period, were introduced into our faith, and, you know, sure. You know, exploring that and trying to understand that. And then, and it was definitely, I mean, we were all kind of learning our instruments, you know, we were very young, 15, 16 years old. So, you know, I could freaking barely play. And DJ was just super into, you know, getting as much music as possible that had to do with God as possible. So he ordered everything and anything out of these fanzines that he would get. You know, this predates HM, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe he, you know, heck, he might have the first HM issue or Heaven's Metal issue. Who knows? But like wow. all in this time period, and this would have been like, you know, like 88, 89 time era. And, 99% of the things that he would order off these out of the mail order stuff was just terrible. It was just trash. It was just crap, and even some of the more professional type stuff, that was coming out. It was like, the production was poor,
Yeah.
and all of that. And that was a big catalyst. He was like, Lance is a better drummer than this guy. And, it's like, and like, he just had this vision of like, we all play, we're all into music, we're all into metal. We should form a band. And it all kind of coincided around this new faith, that we had as teenagers, or, this intense faith. And so, yeah, I mean, we were all, kind of in the same place, as far as that part goes. And yeah, I mean, it just all kind of coincided together, for lack of a better, type thing. But I definitely credit, just, having this intense, desire to, do something for God, and do something musically, because independent of that, I don't know that, who knows if we ever would have started a band, like just a regular band or whatever, Now, granted, hindsight's 2020, because it put us in a box that we've been in for 30 years. So whatever.
Is that a box you're trying to climb out of still, or don't you care?
I mean, we'll try. How are we trying? We haven't put out an album in 10 years. It's like, I sell t-shirts for a living,
Meaning, like, is that a box that you wanted to stay in, as your guys' career progressed?
Hell no.
I kind of figured that was the case. It's just harder to name, like, Living Sacrifice,
Yeah, well, I mean, the name is kind of badass.
It is badass.
So, right. It's not about the name. It was just about early on, before it was cool to be in a Christian,
Sure.
affiliated band in the early 2000s. We were battling the whole 90s, trying to get on tours with like Machine Head and Sepultura, and signed to Roadrunner Records and Metal Blade and all of that. I mean, we were pursuing all of that, and essentially being turned down.
Yeah. Even though you were likely better than their next best signing, or their next choice for a signing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that. I just feel like I think that we were achieving a certain amount of success, and people, respect, kind of essentially had a respect for the band, but it was just like such an uncool thing. In the 90s, and that all changed, early 2000s. I don't know when, but I guess when Under Oath kind of crossed over and stuff like that. But like, then it was just like, it was almost like easier to get things, to do things or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, going off of that, there's something that Mason and I have kind of discussed for a while, and we've been trying to get to the bottom of it. And I think that Living Sacrifice plays a large part of it, being a southern metal band. Maybe not like actually like southern metal, but a metal band from the South. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah.
That wave of Christian metal or Christian alternative music that kind of came out of that southern, the dirty South. It was ubiquitous. I mean, most of the best metal bands that were a Christian influence and with a Christian message came out of the South, especially like Georgia and Tennessee and the Carolinas. And I've been trying to figure out why it is that so many great metal bands, specifically Christian metal bands, came out of the South in the late 90s, early 2000s. I have a suspicion to say that part of it is because of Living Sacrifice's influence on the region. I also think that, obviously it's probably because it's part of the culture. I mean, it's the Bible Belt, so on and so forth. But here's what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the culture. I mean, you could throw Texas in there, Florida, the Southeast in general. I mean, it's the Bible Belt, so it's like you're going to have a higher percentage of guys that came up in the church and started picking up their instruments and seeing, kind of like, oh well, there's this whole scene around God and heavy music and stuff like that. And yeah, and it was kind of like by the late '90s, early 2000s, there was your solid state, and a ton of credit and your face down records,
Yeah.
and credit goes to those guys for providing an outlet. I mean, our first label, REX, it had some heavy stuff, but then it also branched off into like, electronic and stuff like that. And the label ultimately just went away, and then that's what allowed us to sign to Solid State in '97.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it is weird. And I've had this discussion with lots of people that aren't Christian at all. They're like, yeah, like the first 10 albums that came out on Solid State are all amazing records.
All bangers, yeah.
And it's like, you're talking Spitfire, your Embodiments, your, Overcomes, and, of course, Zayo and Norma Jeans and stuff like that. And that was all like pre-2000,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, weird time, kind of just a weird time.
I have a suspicion to say that a lot of those bands, though, were probably, in the crowd at a Living Sacrifice show. I think maybe you guys might have influenced them to a certain extent, at least,
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. We definitely played with them. We played with early versions of Under Oath and Norma Jean Ludacris and Embodiment, and yeah, we played with all of those bands early on, and like probably as early as 95, 96.
Well, shoot, you guys even had Corey Brandon from Norma Jean in the band for a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, and I knew those guys because we're both from the great state of Arkansas, and
go Hogs!
Great state. I like the way you put that.
Woo pig suey. You hear the conviction in my voice, right? Hey, there's very, very nice aspects to Arkansas and not so much. Just like every state, right?
Totally.
So yeah, we played with Esocaris, or as they were called originally, Elliot, and probably sometime in '95 or '96 or something like that, and just became friends with them. And I've always loved what he and Matt did, with that band, and yeah, so yeah,
cool stuff.
Our history goes way back.
Yeah. Sort of along those lines, one of the really cool things about Living Sacrifice is all the bands that you guys kind of are associated with because of how many members have been in Living Sacrifice and some of the bands that those guys have been in. And so you're not only associated with bands like Norma Jean, obviously, but you're also associated with like POD, Evanescence, obviously Zayo. It's just really cool, like how many really influential bands at that time are connected in some way, shape, or form with Living Sacrifice. It really is kind of this cool little like connecting point. The Living Sacrifice is kind of this connecting point to all these other really cool bands from that time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I agree totally. It's like early 2000s, like we kind of called it quits or whatever, and because we were just burned out. We had little kids and we couldn't tour anymore. We were making, nobody couldn't make a living for our families. And so I just had to completely step away from it. And that's when Rocky had joined Evanescence, and their first album came out and just blew up. And then not long after that, Jason joined POD, and we had, I mean, we had played with those guys on lots of shows in the late '90s before they signed to a major label. Because the funny thing about it was, it's like, like back then there wasn't a ton of like metal bands that we could play with, and so anybody that was touring, we would end up on just odd bills or bills. I mean, we did a full like 3-week tour with POD, and in like 97, right after Reborn came out, you know, because we knew them. Like back then it was like, hey, we're coming to your town, and if you know some promoters in your area, we could do a show there, and then we could do a show. And so it was like, you know, in 95, 96 ish, you know, we played, you know, it's like the POD guys came to Arkansas, and you know, their RV broke down. So they like ended up stranded for a week, and they stayed with us, and you know, went down to Texas and played some shows with Embodiment, like early Embodiment, and then came back and waited for their RV to get fixed and stuff like that. And so, yeah, you just form these bonds that just like last for, you know, years or whatever. And so, yeah, you know, when the opportunity arose, you know, Jason was no longer playing with us because, well, we weren't a band at the time, but you know, he had left the band earlier to get off, you know, to get off the road, for the most part. And so, yeah, it's kind of one of those weird things. And then obviously Corey, you know, joining Norma Jean. So.
Yeah. Just so many cool bands. You know, you mentioned a bit ago that it's been 10 years since the last album. Is there any like idea around like potentially writing a new album at some point? Is that something that the guys in the band right now are kind of itching towards at any point? You know, you guys have like kind of played shows here and there over the last like couple years and stuff. So it's not like you guys are completely inactive. But yeah, is there any idea around like potentially writing a new album? And yeah, because at this point, this is the longest between albums, or the longest you guys have gone without writing a new album and releasing a new album. So yeah, can we expect anything in the future?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's strange. I mean, we didn't intend for it to be this long. I think, you know, things just got in the way, you know, life wise. And you know, since, you know, we don't make a living doing it, you know, it's like, you know, there's always, you know, it takes a, you know, it takes a lot for us to put something together and to have it be at the level that we normally, you know, expect for us. And so, but really, you know, I mean, it's probably laziness.
I love the honesty.
It's like, you know, I mean, yeah, the desire is there for sure. And we've been talking about it for years, and there's riffs going back and forth here or there. It's just a matter of like, okay, let's record this, and you know, and then see where it goes. But it you know, I don't know that it would be in the form of a full album right now. I think it makes more sense to just put out some songs, and you know, if those songs can you know, collate onto an EP or an album later, you know, for vinyl, for physical release, then, you know, probably something along those lines. But yeah, man, a full album, oof, that's a big one.
Especially these days. I mean, most people don't even put out albums anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, it seems like they do here. I mean,
it seems like it, but it's also surprising how many people don't.
Right, and it's not, you know, it's probably not necessary unless you're at the level to where, you know, okay, you know, we can press 1,000 vinyl and sell through no problem, you know.
Right. But which you guys would be able to do. So I guess you guys have to come out with an album now.
Yeah. Other than that, I just, you know, it's not necessary. And I think within our you know, with our scene, within our scene and our genre, like, you know, everything's changed. It's like, how do you market? How do you live? How are you going to listen to it? What's necessary to, you know, put out music, you know, not as a career, but, you know, for the love of putting out something new and creative. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be 10 songs, you know?
For sure. Mm-hmm. So. Is there a point in Living Sacrifice's lifespan that you felt like the most fulfilled and happy with it? Other than right now when you're not doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it is the most fulfilling now because there's no pressure of like supporting a family or other people or figuring out health insurance, and stuff like that. And it's easy, and that's what I mean. It's like too easy because like, there's no expectation. We're not signed to a deal anymore. Right. So like we don't have to put out music, but if we did, we'll just do it. It's like, let's do it ourselves. But prior to that, I would say like, right around the hammering process when we were touring, really, really heavily, man, we were just firing on tons of cylinders, and we're playing 200 shows a year probably.
Jeez, that's a lot.
And, we ended up doing some just really pretty successful, some successful tours around that time period. And we went out with POD, and I think they had released Satellite. And so that
around 2002.
Yeah, they had just become kind of massive. And we did a tour with Project 86 and Stavesacre, which was just a lot of fun. But it was like not long after that, it was kind of like this realization of like, okay, we're playing with the same bands. We need to kind of like break the mold somehow. Mm-hmm. But we were also in a lot of debt. So that, it was the most satisfying because of how well we were performing and the level of our shows. I mean, all the shows were packed, and it was just a different time period, It was like, it was, 99, 2000, and just crazy to think about. What was today? Today's 29th. Somebody sent me a flyer for the last show we did in Little Rock, which was 20 years ago yesterday.
Wow.
And that was supposed to be our final show, but then we got an awesome offer to do like a festival or something like that. That ended up being the final show
for sure.
But I can't remember the name of that festival right now. But yeah, it's just I mean, the other thing about the 10-year gap thing is just like, and I'm sure you guys know, but like the older you get, it's like Einstein was right, the relativity thing. It's like it goes so much faster.
It is. It does go that way. I mean, 10 years is like a blink. I think that hammering process, and I don't think I'm alone in saying this. I think that hammering process is a perfect album, especially in the scene that you guys come from. It is honestly perfection. Was there kind of an expectation like, hey, we wrote one hell of an album here? Was there an expectation at the time like, now we're gonna work 200 shows a year, we're going to put everything we have into this to try to blow it up and hit that mainstream button?
Yeah, well, I mean, whatever mainstream was at that time, but yeah, that was the reason we were, we were all just super dedicated, and that was like, everybody was on board to make it happen, and we were all committed, yeah, I mean, we just went hard for 2 years, and and I don't think it was necessarily just because, oh, we think this album is so much better than anything we've ever done before. I mean, we were proud of it, obviously, but we were at the time in our lives, it was just like, hey, we're either going to do this or we're not, right. So we were doing it. We were going for it, for sure.
I dig that.
Let's talk about Furnace Fest. I know you guys played a couple years ago, and you're obviously playing again now.
People were still talking about it last year, by the way.
Yeah.
They won't shut up about your guys' show, man.
Awesome.
So, let's talk about the upcoming show. obviously, for people listening, go buy some Furnace Fest tickets. You can see Cullen and I, you can see Bruce play. It's going to be a hell of a time. But yeah, Bruce, tell us a little bit about maybe the story around going and playing Furnace Fest again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we played the original at least 2 of the years. I think maybe 2000, 2001. We were friends with Chad Johnson from back in his venue days, and he also reminds me. Actually, I had lunch with him last week. But that's the other perk about living in Nashville. You get to have lunch with Chad Johnson.
No need to sell me anymore. This sounds great.
Yeah. But Chad, Chad's my age, and so go way back as far as like he was, booking bands in Birmingham back then, and when he started Furnace Fest, we were all about it, and I always admired him, with Take Hold, and he had his venue and stuff like that, and he likes to point out that we were the last band to play his venue when he was running it, because we exceeded the fire code, and no, we exceeded the fire code, and they just basically said you can't have shows here. So Living Sacrifice is the reason that Chad lost his original venue.
At least he still talks to you. He still has dinner with you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so when we heard that this was happening again, we're still somewhat active as far as just playing shows and trying to do cool stuff that we all have fun doing. That's the one thing that I love about this band still, is that it's an excuse to just hang out with Rocky and Arthur and Lance and DJ from time to time as well. He's been joining us recently as we've been reissuing some of our old records, our original records that he was singing on. But yeah, when I heard early on, but maybe even before they announced Furnace Fest, that it was happening, and we were all about it. So yeah, and I tell you what, like what was it? It's 21. Exceeded all expectations. I couldn't freaking believe it. It was just insane. Just the friends, and the community, and not just Christian scene or Christian bands. I mean, There were a lot of dudes and a lot of bands from that over the years that we've all just played. We all play together, and have come to know each other, and so. Absolutely just was like amazing. And I was there last year, working with Blindside, on their merch, and just hanging out.
I thought that was you. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I was just there hanging out because the lineup was amazing. I wanted to see Quicksand, and I wanted to see Manchester Orchestra, and Blindside, of course.
The best.
Stairwell. I wanted to see them.
Yeah.
So it was it's a special thing,
100%.
It is one of Cullen and I's like kind of more core memories. Cullen and I have been friends for over 15 years now, and the things that we talk about to this day now are the last couple of years of Furnace Fest. And so we're just so stoked again, going again this year, and then being able to see you guys. I mean, it's such a fun time. And so are you planning on like staying around kind of the whole weekend? Or are you just going the day of your show and that's it? Or what's your plan around the weekend?
We'll definitely be there Friday, and Saturday is the day we play. Maybe not sure about Sunday. So okay. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'd love to say hi if we run into each other at any point.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Before we get into the top 5, though, there's one other thing I have to ask, and I think this is a very, very important question. And it's probably a question that's been seared into the minds of every single person who's ever seen Living Sacrifice live. What is it like playing in a band with the most beautiful person that's ever walked the earth, with Darren? especially with those long, beautiful locks in the early days. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I bet it was just ridiculous. Girls fawning over him all over the place, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt in the press shots to have him be in the band, but I mean, he started the band. It was his band, so
Yeah.
it was kind of like, it was all good, but we were kids, grew up together, so
Yeah.
I didn't really look at it that way. It was just one of those things.
Well, you're too kind.
Yeah.
He's like, in my imagination, he's like what the angel Gabriel would look like. I don't know.
Jeez.
He's gonna love this. Well,
I bet he will.
Yeah. Well. Speaking of Furnace Fest, and then what we have planned, though, I definitely want to bring up the fact that DJ will be playing some old songs with us, and
Awesome.
we haven't
Nice.
nailed down the exact set list or anything like that, so you'll have to show up and find out. But our first 3 albums that came out, before the Solid State albums, they were all reissued, obviously, but we're now reissuing them again, and one of them in particular, the Non-Existent, our second album, was completely remixed, remastered, and because the production was pretty bad originally, and we may remix Inhabit as well, which is our third album, but we're still kind of like in the early planning phases of that. But just loving this resurgence of vinyl and people that want to collect and people that love these old records and love the DJ era. Because that is the thing. I mean, people are like, bring DJ back. Bruce sucks, stuff like that. And
it's just because he's pretty. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stylistically, we were very different.
Far different. For sure.
With Darren at the helm, and everything, and so it's just cool. It's cool revisiting these songs and now in a more kind of mature way. And performing them in 2023 or whatever year it's going to be, next year, 24. Yeah,
you're right.
24 next year. I think that's how numbers work.
Right.
Yeah.
Math. Anyways, so yeah, Furnace Fest. We want to try to make it an event. These are not. This is a time where
Nice.
you can pull your buddies on stage. In 21, we had Joe come up and sing one of the songs off of Non-Existent, actually, or parts of it, and Joe from Beloved, and it's a cool opportunity to make some cool stuff happen. That's like people will talk about, like, not that you're going to find at any other show that we're going to play, between now and then or after, and then probably some a creative type cover of some iconic songs with some buddies of ours and some awesome bands. So yeah, I mean, we want to give people an excuse to come see us this year, and not be like, I've seen Living Sacrifice, I know what they do. We're putting something together that's different. So
Sweet.
That's worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many great bands, and my gosh, they're probably going to put us up against somebody massive, and we'll just be like, oh, okay, well, see you later, crowd.
I doubt that'll be the case.
I doubt it.
So yeah, give people a reason to stick around and watch us.
Yeah, it's probably pretty cool for you guys too. Especially since you guys have been a band for so long, for almost 35 years now. What's really cool is the fact that you guys have met so many people throughout all these years because of the band, and a lot of those people are going to be at Furnace Fest. So it's probably a really just cool place for you to connect with people that you might not have seen for a while.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. That's what I was saying. That's what I love about it. It's some of these folks I'm only going to get to see at something like Furnace Fest or or a festival, or if they're on tour, you know, coming through Nashville,
Mhm.
or, you know, I get an opportunity to see their show somewhere. And yeah, it's just like you know, a reconnection, and just like, hey, you know, and you know, some of these bands, it's like, man, I'm just glad you're still playing and doing stuff, or
Yeah.
I'm glad that you got back together and are making music again on your own terms.
Yeah.
You know, that's huge. That's a huge thing to be able to do and to pull off and to accomplish at, at an older age, you know, when you've got so many other responsibilities and things you have to take care of. It's like, you know, we got a new Becoming the Archetype record this year. Like, freaking awesome, you know? And
Yeah.
you know, that's no easy feat, you know. That takes, it's just a lot of time. I mean, we know it's been 10 years.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. We're too lazy.
Should we do top 5?
Yeah, let's do it, man. You ready for your top 5? This is most influential, not necessarily the most favorite, but the most influential.
Okay.
If you need a moment, we can give you a
These
moment
are always,
too. But
these are always so hard, you know, so to speak, I guess. You know, all you know, the early stuff that I got into when I was like, you know, the first show that I went to was I was 12, and was Judas Priest.
Oh,
And
nice. Great start.
very influential, but like what got me into just music beyond like you know, like all the Kitty stuff, you know, I think I got into, like, I think I went down and bought the Rick Springfield single Jesse's Girl or something. Because like in
Yeah.
the 80s you could go to the grocery store, you go to Safeway, and they were selling like little singles, 7-inch singles. And so I had a record player, and so I'd go buy that. And other than that, you know, it was all just like, you know, dumb stuff, Disco Duck and whatever your parents would buy for you.
Disco
You remember Disco Duck?
I know of it.
Yeah. It's like Donald Duck singing all the disco hits. Yeah. And
It's
and
fantastic.
is that the cover that Living Sacrifice is going to be doing? Is some Disco Duck cover of?
There you go.
That's
That's
you
an
found
idea.
Man,
That should at least be an
you
intro
got to edit
to,
that part out.
to a
You know,
song.
this is it's going to be a big reveal. You know what I'm saying? we can't just you know, throw
Spill
all
the
our
beans.
barbers down, you know, all our cards down on the table. But you know, and I had, like, you know, the Village People, YMCA, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, of course.
But it was Van Halen, their first album. Hearing that, but then the album that just like blew my mind in a way that it's like I thought I knew what music was until I heard that, and it was Fair Warning. So Van Halen's Fair Warning, it came out in 1981, and it's just an incredible record, and probably one of Van Halen's least popular records for that time period with Dave Lee Roth. So yeah, I would say that, and then one of the other things that kind of blew me away was hearing Metallica for the first time. It was you know, Fade to Black off of Ride the Lightning, and
you kind of got a Hetfield look today.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Hetfield is one of my favorite. He's one of the guitar players that I look to the most as a guitar player, you know, and you know, he's just, his rhythm is just like just solid, and he invented a genre, like that thud that you hear from his palm muting was. I mean,
the greatest downstroker of all time.
that was not much of a thing until Ride the Lightning. Now, granted, if you go back and listen to there's some Van Halen songs where the tone of the guitar is such on I think Women and Children First. I mean, there's like heavy like, you know, kind of palm muting and thud to that too. I have no clue, you know, obviously, you know, Hetfield's, you know, influences are vast, you know, so, but, you know, that it was not just about playing fast, but creating precision and that tone and that palm muted just dun 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 dun, you know,
heavy and dark and
so that was like, probably the embryonic phase of what, all these other bands copied when they copied Meshuggah. Meshuggah was taking that and just like timesing it times, whatever. Yeah. So that would be another one. Super, super influential. On
So we got Disco Duck. We've got
Rick Springfield.
Rick
Jesse's
Springfield.
Girl.
Oh yeah,
Jesse's
for sure.
Girl.
Jesse's Girl. Yep. And we got Ride the Lightning. All right.
The first two were actual ones. Those were just the precursors of the real music that I got into.
That's right.
Yeah. Not that Rick's not real music. He's, Rick's a great guy. Rick, he's awesome.
Do you know Rick?
No, but
that'd be cool.
No, but the guy's still playing shows, and he's he started a tequila brand with Sammy Hagar. So come on,
Yeah, and he's still wishing he had Jesse's Girl.
Yeah, sure. So let me think. Influential in that way. I mentioned Jawbox earlier, and there's this Jawbox record that was like their second record, Novelty. I'd gotten this. A buddy of mine in high school had given me this Maximum Rock and Roll compilation sampler, and I was just like checking it out or whatever, because it kind of goes back to the whole punk rock metal thing or whatever. Well, this guy was like a metal head, and then he just like made this left turn into like, oh, I'm punk rock now, and then he gave me this sampler, and it was just garbage. I mean, every band on there was just whatever. I was just like, what are you giving me here? But there was a Jawbox song, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. And it was just like this whole like post-punk intricate type math rock. And so that's, other than some of the Metallica stuff, that's where I first started hearing like these weird off-time polyrhythms and just different time signatures. And I'm not a theory guy at all, so I can't even tell you, like, if somebody plays something for me, I'm like, oh, that's 5/8 or 3/4 time or whatever like that. That's not me, but I hear it, and then conversely, I will write a riff with that time signature, or we all collaborate on something that has that, and that absolutely is part of our sound, Living Sacrifice. So yeah, Jawbox, Novelty, and then they put out. They got signed to a major label not long after that, and had a record called "For Your Own Special Sweetheart," and also just they had a hit, sort of a video for that song "Savory" that got sort of big. Anyways, I love that band. That band got back together a few years back. I got tickets and drove to Chicago to see them at the Metro, and I was just like so happy. Say, what am I up to now? That's 3. I will say, even though it was later on, because it was probably 97. We'd already been a band for a good 7-8 years. We put out Reborn on Solid State, and somebody gave us a Meshuggah cassette tape that had Destroy, Erase, Improve on it, and it just kind of changed our world. It was just kind of like, what is this?
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's Meshuggah is freaky with the way that they approach metal. I mean, it's mind boggling.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And then another really big one is kind of going back farther. It's hard to narrow it down, like that. It's sure. But Diary of a Madman Ozzy, and then the first album that Dio did was Sabbath, Heaven and Hell.
Yes, great album. I'm a massive Dio fan, and I think that album is way underrated.
Oh man, it's I put those records on today, and that's what I because that when I first heard Dio, it was with Sabbath, and maybe I knew, honestly. I mean, I might have heard Dio Sabbath before I heard Ozzy Sabbath, but I love Ozzy Sabbath a lot. Yeah, that's I would say all of those were like really massively influential. With Ozzy, Randy Rhoads is playing. Him and Eddie Van Halen for me are like 1 and 2. So
I love it, man. Both those guys are insane technically, but they're not. They don't just rest on their technical chops. They rest on musicality.
You know what blows me away is Wolfgang's band Mammoth.
I haven't listened.
It's Mammoth WVH. It's Eddie Van Halen's son, and a lot of times you have some kid of some massive virtuosos putting out a record. It's like, oh yeah, whatever. Never compares, never. Yeah. And it's not Van Halen at all. But it's rock. It's rock, which is hard to find, like a new band that's like
just straight.
That's rock, yeah. And I say this in a way to where it's like, it's not even like it's sort like I guess it falls in the genre of modern rock, but most of the modern rock you hear on Octane, it's kind of like, oh well, they used all the same drum sounds and they use the same friggin' producer or whatever. If you listen to this, especially if you listen to the last, the newest singles that he put out, oh my gosh, just the songwriting and the musicianship that's there is just like, I'm stoked on it. I'm like, as far as like even something new in the genre of rock and roll that actually you might hear on the radio or not. I haven't even heard this stuff on the radio. And the only reason I know about it is like, he played at Taylor Hawkins' tribute memorial stuff, and he ended up playing with Dave on some Van Halen songs. But his band is called Mammoth, and absolutely check it out. It's it's in the vein of probably Foo Fighters, but very, very interesting, and not, you don't listen to it and think Foo Fighters. I'm just trying to put them into a category of like,
just straight up rock band.
Heaviness.
It's out of the box.
Heaviness, aggressive. Absolutely. Yeah. And you listen to it and you can, and there's not, you're not listening to like, all these, like all this production and backing tracks. It's just freaking musicianship.
Sweet.
So.
Have you listened to like Biffy Clyro or anything like that?
Oh yeah,
kind of like that.
Biffy Clyro is awesome.
Is it similar to that?
Yeah,
kind of style?
yeah. I mean, just like hard freaking hitting, just like just rock, and just like
Sweet.
Guitars, drums, bass, and a guy who can sing, and yeah. That's a good kind of level there.
Cool.
Well, that's a damn good list, sweet. And
very good list.
Yeah, that is right up the alley of kind of what you hear a little bit of all of those bands in Living Sacrifice, which is really cool. Like, not only are they influential on your life, but clearly it actually makes it out, I think, in some of the sounds and tones that you hear in Living Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Especially Disco Duck.
Definitely Disco Duck. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say one of the bands that a few more bands that influenced us as a band was the Crucified, their first two albums, and Believer. So.
For sure, these guys are great.
Just
Mortification as well.
Was
that a part?
Not
of that?
So much.
Not
yeah. I mean, he was kind of doing his own thing, but like we were more like kind of similar as far as like Believer is just very different than us, and Crucified's very different than us, and then Mortification, sonically, I think he was probably pulling from some of the same influences we were. So with that early stuff, with the early thrash and the death metal, so we weren't necessarily influenced by that stuff at all. I think we kind of our stuff kind of came out around the same time.
Yeah. For sure. Cool. Yeah, I was just curious.
Sweet.
Sweet. Well, it is time for things you'd like to plug. Obviously, we have the we have the great Furnace Fest. We're very, very excited to come see you there. I'm sure the fans are very excited to come see you there as well. Do you guys have anything else going on other than the potentially, maybe someday, hopefully there will be maybe potentially a record?
Well, there's definitely new music coming, and you know,
Great.
once we have enough songs that are, you know, available to put you know, all together onto, like, you know, a CD or vinyl or something like that. Yeah, probably so. Other than that, definitely we're reissuing. We've got you know, yeah, here's another fun announcement. I'll just let it out of the bag. I believe we will have the hammering process on vinyl at Furnace Fest for the first time in many years. So there's that unoriginals, working with the late, you know, with Solid State to do that.
Is the hammering process vinyl going to be kind of like what similar to what Blindside did last year with that super limited, like 500 copies kind of deal?
Yeah, it's going to be very limited, but it will be releasing it, you know, pretty much there first. It won't be available online. If there's a few copies left over, you know, eventually it will go online. But yeah, I mean, first crack is going to be at Furnace Fest.
Sweet. Are you working with Jason Zymet with that, with unoriginal vinyl?
Yeah. Yep.
Great guy.
Jason's great. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad that's happening. Again, another reason to get tickets at Furnace Fest, because when else are you going to be able to get, you know, hammering process? So that'd be super cool.
That's right.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Awesome, man. Anything else you'd like to plug?
No, I think I'm good. I'm not.
You're totally,
fine. Yeah, I think I don't have any other creative endeavors going on.
You're gonna do a covers album of Disco.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you so much for hanging out and chatting. We're really stoked to see you at Furnace Fest. We'll definitely say hi to you when we run into you at some point. So we're really excited. Awesome. It's just a couple months from now, and so we're just really stoked. And so everybody get your tickets. There is the link in the episode description. So if you are interested in seeing Living Sacrifice and all the other great bands at Furnace Fest this year, get your tickets. And we're just super stoked to see you, Bruce. So thank you so much for chatting more about Living Sacrifice and the show coming up.
Awesome. Thanks, Mason. Thanks, Cullen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
There you go.